This morning's prelude, if you didn't catch it on the screen when the choir started singing, was Now is the Cool of the Day by Jean Ritchie. It's based on Bible verses from both the Hebrew Scriptures and the Christian Testament to powerfully express the divine call to care for the earth and one another. If Ritchie's song tells us we humans can protect the land and the water, if we can work for justice and freedom, then we can live in paradise. The problem is that it's also we humans who are polluting the land and the water and causing injustice and oppression in the first place. But one of the foundation stones of liberal theology is agency, that we have a choice in how we use our abilities and our energies, particularly when it comes to changing the world and ourselves. It's not what we have, but what we choose to do with what we have that really matters. And that means we are also responsible for our actions, whether we do further harm or whether we help to heal the harm we have already done. So to complement Ritchie's song, here are words by Nancy Newhall, who was a widely published writer on photography, conservation, and American culture, best known for providing text to accompany photographs by Ansel Adams. We seek a renewed stirring of life for the earth. We plead that what we are capable of doing is not always what we ought to do. We urge that all people now determine that a wide, untrammeled freedom shall remain to testify that this generation has love for the next. If we want to succeed in that, we might show, meanwhile, a little more love for this one and for each other. Today, we're doing Climate in the Pulpit, a program of Virginia Interfaith Power and Light in which we've participated for a number of years now. This year's theme is resilience, cultivating peace with nature. And in this service, we'll explore that through reflection and music and story and ritual. After all, we know that our world is suffering from pollution, exploitation, and a changing climate full of worsening disasters, looming on the horizon. Humanity is responsible for that, but thanks to our agency, there is always hope. Time and again, we have found our resolve even in the face of adversity, thanks to the courage of our faith and the love of our communities. It's time to pick each other up and live into our religious wisdom, our covenants with one another, and our care for the earth. Now, before I introduce our next hymn, I need to say something about what might seem like a really big mixed message going from that hymn into what follows it. That's because it's one of the very few gloomy hymns in our otherwise sunny hymn book, and then we're following it with a child dedication. But that's sort of the point of this service. Yes, a climate disaster is looming, but there is always hope. Even in the gloom, there are bright places. And there's no better antidote to grief and sadness than celebrating the promise and potential of each child and remembering what really matters. Now, onto the hymn. The peppered moth is still telling a story of light and dark, of change and adaptation, of survival and hope. It's a story of resilience, not of merely going back to the way things were, but of adapting, withstanding, and recovering. Let me give you another example of resilience. Who can tell me how to tell the age of a tree? What do? You count the rings. And why do the rings tell you the age of a tree? Yeah, you get one ring as the tree grows each year. And what sort of ring would be made by a year of plenty of water and sunlight when the tree could grow well? A big ring, Yes. What sort of ring would be made by a year that wasn't so good, when the tree couldn't grow so well? A thin, narrow ring. Yes. Here's a slice of wood that I was given some years ago. I'm going to let you pass it around so that you can have a closer look at it. You can count the rings if you want. There are a lot. But look at how the rings are all different. For one thing, they're not perfect circles. Sometimes the rings are thicker on one side than on the other. Sometimes the rings are darker or lighter. Sometimes there are other marks embedded in the wood. If we know how to listen, this slice of wood is telling us a story about the tree it came from. It's telling us its history. There are a few places in the world where trees have lived for thousands of years. Some trees in the mountains of Sweden are known to be over 9,000 years old. Trees can tell us a lot about their own history, and from that we can figure out a lot about the weather over that much time. Now, which rings do you think make the wood tougher? Big rings when it's easy for the tree to grow, or narrow rings when it was difficult? Narrow rings, yes. Narrow rings from hard times make the wood tougher. And if there was a forest fire, or there were insects, or some other damage to the tree, that makes the toughest wood of all. Trees don't just tell us their own stories, they tell us something about ours too. Sometimes life is easy, and sometimes life is hard. Of course, we'd prefer it to be easy, and we shouldn't deliberately make life more difficult, particularly for other people. But it's those times when we don't get our own way, or when we have to work a bit harder, or when we're not as happy as we like. It's those times that actually make us stronger and more able to deal with other challenges we might face. Speaking of which, we're currently facing the biggest challenge that humanity has ever faced, namely global climate change. And if we don't get to grips with it, we're in for some very, very hard times. Actually, in some parts of the world, generally the less privileged parts, those hard times have already started. But unless we all get serious about the climate crisis, all of us, our summers will be even hotter, our storms will be even more dangerous, and our coastlines will be underwater. And even if we're able to stave off the worst effects of global climate change, we can't just go back to the way things used to be. For one thing, the way things used to be is what got us into this crisis. It wasn't sustainable for the earth or for humanity. You can't build a sustainable society on top of exploitation and inequality. For another, we've changed the world so much that we can't change it back to how it was 50 years ago, let alone 500 years. That's why we're talking about resilience, the capacity to adapt, withstand, and recover. Now, resilience is often described as bouncing back, like a squashed rubber ball returning to its original shape. But that's not resilience, that's elasticity. Resilience is not about going back to how things were, it's about finding ways to live with how things are now. Now, this congregation in particular, and Unitarian Universalism as a whole, are already helping us with that. Consider our UUFP covenant, which we read earlier. It includes our promises to protect our earth and to embrace transformation within ourselves and others. One way these promises show up is in our renewed work, led by the Earth Justice team, to become a green sanctuary congregation. What's more, the Green Sanctuary 2030 program names one of its four main elements as adaptation and resilience. So part of the action plan we're developing will be about building our resilience to the effects of climate change. Turning to the Unitarian Universalist Association, our current UUA covenant has for almost 40 years asked us to affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. The proposed new UUA covenant names both interdependence and transformation as two of our shared values that are centered on love. And we find the language of resilience in the very meaning of transformation that the covenant gives. We adapt to the changing world. Then there are our partnerships. Today's Share the Basket partner, as it happens, is Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, which has been asking us for years to bring climate change with us into the voting booth. This year, Virginia Interfaith Power and Light has produced a non-partisan election guide, reminding us that unlike federal elections for president or Congress, local elections, such as for school boards, often come down to hundreds or even just dozens of votes. Virginia Interfaith Power and Light has also produced a faith voter calendar with a useful resource or a reflection prompt for every day between now and November 7th, Election Day. Of course, you can also vote early. I hope you are. Today on the calendar is a quote from the late Representative Donald McEachin. We need a new era of climate justice, and the communities most affected by climate change must have prominent seats at the table as we usher in this new era. We've given out copies of the guides and the calendars to everyone here. Thank you, Pam Luke, for ordering them for us. And we hope you'll use these yourself or pass them on to a friend who needs this information. And you'll be hearing more from the Legislative Justice team about our new commitment to be a 100% voting congregation too. Of course, beyond our covenants and partnerships, there is religious wisdom that can help us develop resilience too. I mentioned earlier that one of the foundation stones of liberal religion is agency, that we have the power to decide how we use our abilities and our energies to change the world and ourselves. And within Unitarian Universalism, we consider scientific knowledge to be a religious source, including the evolution of the peppered moth and what we can learn from the rings of trees. We also lift up the words and deeds of prophetic people, and that's not just people who are in history books. This summer, a lawsuit against the state of Montana was won by 16 people from the ages of 22 down to just 5 years old, who successfully made the case that state policies promoting fossil fuel extraction and forbidding the consideration of climate impacts actually violated their right to a clean and healthy environment, something that's been in Montana's constitution since the 1970s. Well, guess what? Virginia has similar language in our state constitution too. But for me, our most important religious resource for developing resilience is to be found in one another, both within this congregation and beyond. So here at the UUFP this morning, we celebrated a child dedication, reminding us of the promise and potential of each child and remembering what really matters. And in the wider UU world, there is this wisdom with which I'm going to conclude my homily from my colleague, the Reverend Dr. Kristin Harper, minister at the UU Church in Barnstable, Massachusetts. Each day provides us with an opportunity to love again, to hurt again, to embrace joy, to experience unease, to discover the tragic. Each day provides us with the opportunity to love. This day is no different. This hour no more unique than the last, except maybe today, maybe now, among friends and fellow journeyers, we can share ourselves. I'm going to ask you some wondering questions now, and I'll give you a little time after each to reflect. Jeffrey will also put each question on the screen as I ask it. I wonder how you have experienced your own agency, your own power to decide how to use your abilities and energies to change the world and yourself. I wonder what it means to you to be part of a community dedicated to the welfare of all our children. I wonder when harder times have made you stronger and more able to deal with other challenges. I wonder where you have been inspired to become more resilient. We close with a poem by Kathy Jetnil-Kajina, a young woman from the Marshall Islands. Jetnil-Kajina spoke at the United Nations Climate Summit in 2014 about the risk of her homeland disappearing, like many of its island neighbors in the Pacific, due to sea level rise from climate change. As part of her speech, Jetnil-Kajina recited this powerful poem she had written for her then 7-month-old daughter, Matafele Penem. Jeffrey, please play the video.
Dear Matafele Penem, you are a 7-month-old sunrise of gummy smiles. You are bald as an egg and bald as the Buddha. Your thighs that are thunder, shrieks that are lightning, so excited for bananas, hugs, and our morning walks along the lagoon. Dear Matafele Penem, I want to tell you about that lagoon, that lucid, sleepy lagoon lounging against the sunrise. Men say that one day, that lagoon will devour you. They say it will gnaw at the shoreline, chew at the roots of your breadfruit trees, gulp down rows of your seawalls, and crunch through your island's shattered bones. They say you, your daughter, and your granddaughter too, will wander rootless, with only a passport to call home. Dear Matafele Penem, don't cry. Mommy promises you, no one will come and devour you. No greedy whale of a company sharking through political seas, no backwater bullying of businesses with broken morals, no blindfolded bureaucracies gonna push this mother ocean over the edge. No one's drowning, baby. No one's moving. No one's losing their homeland. No one's gonna become a climate change refugee. Or should I say, no one else. To the Carteret Islanders of Papua New Guinea and to the Taro Islanders of Fiji, I take this moment to apologize to you. We are drawing the line here. Because baby, we are going to fight. Your mommy, daddy, boo-boo, Bimah, your country, and your president too, we will all fight. And even though there are those hidden behind platinum titles who like to pretend that we don't exist, that the Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Maldives, and Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, and floods of Pakistan, Algeria, and Colombia, and hurricanes, tidal waves, and earthquakes didn't exist, still, there are those who see us. Hands reaching out, fists raising up, banners unfurling, megaphones booming, and we are canoes blocking coal ships. We are the radiance of solar villages. We are the rich, clean soil of the farmer's past. We are petitions blooming from teenage fingertips. We are families biking, recycling, reusing, engineers dreaming, designing, building, artists painting, dancing, writing. We are spreading the word. And there are thousands out on the street, marching with signs, hand in hand, chanting for change now. They're marching for you, baby. They're marching for us. Because we deserve to do more than just survive. We deserve to thrive. Dear Mata Filipino, you are eyes heavy with drowsy weight. So just close those eyes, baby, and sleep in peace. Because we won't let you down. You'll see.
May it be so.